Sunrise report, something of an accomplishment on this end. I am starting this at 6:35 a.m., which is the exact official time for the sunrise here in Ormond Beach, Florida. It takes a little while to get over those trees, but from a personal perspective, I am pretty happy with myself. I've been using what time is the sun rising in Alaska and California the last few days, so hey, I got it together today. Of course, you won't see it until if we even have a sunrise. I think it looks like a clear day until it gets past those buildings and trees up there. And as usual, when I'm in this situation, I will take a little walk out the door of this fine coffee establishment here in Ormond Beach, which you should check out, Eden Fresh Cafe, especially if you're driving up or down I-95, come by for a visit. It's in Ormond Beach. Yeah, so let's talk about statism-celebrating satirist John Oliver, or as I like to call him, Joe H. No Liver. Put a few spaces, rearranged the spaces, put a dot after the H. You spell it the same way, and then put a hyphen between the no and the liver, or the end of John and Oliver, and you get that. It was revealed, was getting a lot of his so-called comedy via ideas from the Hillary Clinton campaign, which really shouldn't be that surprising if you see the way he operates. And I talked for a while on Backlash on Shark Nation Radio, which I host, yesterday with one of my guests, Jack Posobiec, about John Oliver and his very racial bot campaign against FCC Chairman Ajit Pai. There are some videos. I'll actually put the links up there. I've made it into clips where you can hear about that. But it was a topic. And then I saw this. I went on various sites that I look at a regular basis, and I recommend to you. I'll go through them again. Among others, Zero Hedge, Ace of Spades, Market Ticker, and then there are just a lot of people who I think write good stuff, and I often will link to it on Facebook. There's so many of them, so much more worth your time than the so-called mainstream media. By the way, Sultan Kanish, Daniel Greenfield is one I regularly recommend too, and whatever David Goldman writes for whatever site. So let me read you this from Ace of Spades. The link is up there. Fine if you turn me off and just go to the link itself and go through some of the comments. I'll give you the best of those here. But if you're walking your dog, or you're driving to work, or whatever you're doing, working out at the gym, and you just prefer to hear my voice than actually read the thing, so be it. Here's the story. John Oliver, as I mentioned, I call him Joe H. No Liver. I think you get the joke by now. I'm just going to refer to him as John Oliver from this point on. But the headline is, John Oliver, while attacking Trump and the GOP for tax loopholes and trusts designed to reduce property taxes, uses tax loophole and trust to reduce property taxes on $9.5 million NYC luxury penthouse. And this is from the New York Observer. Most of the content here is going to come from the New York Observer, which, full disclosure, Jared Kushner owns. But it's a little bit of fight back, pushback. Whereas we like to say with the sort of radio show I'm doing, backlash. No, it wouldn't really be backlash, because backlash is sort of from the people, from the masses, or in a fishing sense, it can mean just getting yourself into a mess. This is more just payback. Okay, it starts off. Ain't no hypocrisy as pungent as that of the tax-dodging, champagne socialist aristocrat. I prefer limousine liberal, but so be it. And then it goes to the article from the Observer. The hypocrisy really gets ratcheted up with John Oliver, the number one darling to so many liberal anti-Trumpies, who regularly attacks GOP tax schemes as giveaways to the rich and detrimental to the poor. Back in July 2014, in an episode in which he lamented the wealth gap in America, which has resulted in the richest 1% of Americans controlling 20% of annual income, Oliver said, "At this point, the rich..." I can't do a British accent or a John Oliver accent. "At this point, the rich are just running up the score. What sets America apart is that we are actively introducing policies that disproportionately benefit the wealthy." And of course, he's not even American. Such as tax cuts and loopholes like trusts. So it's a little surprising to discover that just months before, Oliver had a tax attorney set up 2 revocable trusts, one for him and one for his wife, to hide the couple, that is correct, wife, not life partner. It is wife in John Oliver's case. I just want to make that clear. To hide the couple's purchase of a $9.5 million Manhattan penthouse, that he used a tax loophole created by Donald Trump himself back in the 1970s. Well, it would have been created, I guess, by the lawyers who Trump was influencing, maybe. Created by Donald Trump himself back in the 1970s, when the current president was merely a prominent New York real estate developer and aspiring celebrity author. The loophole in question is the banally named 421A tax dodge, which was recently attacked in a Daily News op-ed written by two New York State Democrats, one a senator and the other an assemblyman. But just 4 months before Oliver's July show, he had hired slick New York law firm Proskauer Rose LLP. By the way, I did spend a summer there when I was in law school. It wasn't that bad. If it had been worse, I would have realized that the whole big law thing wasn't for me earlier, but I guess tolerable would be the best word, which, in addition to union busting and representing BP America, Chevron Texaco, and ExxonMobil, specializes in helping the rich find tax breaks and buy real estate. In other words, Oliver's lawyer is exactly the type of fancy-pants attorney who helps his 1% clientele get the tax breaks and use the loopholes that Oliver gets such mileage deriding on TV. Oliver benefits from New York's property tax system, which offers huge advantages to residents of rich enclaves like the one where he lives. For example, even though Oliver paid $9.5 million for his penthouse, the city assessed its market value for tax purposes at just $1.3 million. However, only $515,000 of that amount was billable for property taxes. At a rate of 12.8%, Oliver normally would have paid $66,390. However, property tax records show that, thanks to Trump and Roy Cohn, Oliver gets the very generous 421A tax break on the penthouse. Hence, his property's billable value after the exemption plunged by over $300,000, and he owed just $27,343 for 2016. That comes out to a property tax rate of roughly 0.25%, which would make Ronald Reagan and Ayn Rand dance in their graves from happiness. And it goes back to what Ace of Spades writes here. Those are the highlights, but the stuff I've cut out is really good. Going into detail about the Lux Pad's description, Oliver's well-heeled hedge fund manager neighbors, and the services provided by his law firm to wealthy clients. It's almost as if the rich clown John Oliver is just running up the score at this point, that's using the term he used, and actively exploiting policies that disproportionately benefit himself at the expense of his viewers. And then some comments, I did skim through these before. Someone writes, I'm sick of all these darlings of the left. Oliver, Samantha Bee, Colbert, Maddow. They are only darlings because each night they simply affirm their audience's biases, prejudices, and opinions, and, in Maddow's case, screwball conspiracy theories. It's not about talent, wit, intelligence, and if any of them were to stray just once, half their audience would disappear. Oh look, an Englishman who doesn't want to pay taxes. Where have I heard this story before? Good one. I guess that's a reference to the Revolution. Oh, this is great. Colbert's audience demonstrated that most of them don't even have a clue what it is they're supposed to be for or against. Other than abortion, for, and Trump, against, and the United States, against. That is, well, you could probably come up with more examples here. Black Lives Matter, for example, but he doesn't mention that. That would be controversial. Well, I don't know. But I think the story he's referring to is how Colbert's audience 2 nights ago cheered when he mentioned the Comey firing, and then Colbert had to tell them they weren't supposed to cheer then. Funny. New York City's real estate taxes have been rife with abuse. One scam is for tax abatements for new residential developments, provided that some units are given to lower income at way below market rates. These aren't handed out randomly. It says IFYKWIM, although we're led to think so. So maybe it's like college students or baristas who are trust fund kids. I don't know. Favored political insiders get a steal. Developer gets his building done. City loses real estate tax revenue. Everyone else makes up the difference. Another, it's also just more evidence that rich people are against tax cuts because they don't want other people in caps, to join their status. That explains why People like Bill Gates, for example, are so against tax cuts because there's an element of pulling up the ladder once you've made it. Well, you don't want others to join through their own hard work, the elite. Another comment. In fairness, one of Oliver's 25-plus writers actually wrote that. John's just the claptrap doing the yapping. There is nothing more I hate than an ultra-wealthy person who pretends to have the working class in their best interests when they support high taxes and no rights for other. Hypocrisy. It's what's for liberals breakfast, lunch, dinner, brunches, snacks. Then there's a criticism of the Observer similar to the one I made, and which starts off by saying, and that's how you get fake news. Donald Trump wasn't in a position to create tax loopholes in the 1970s. He wasn't in government. Good point. Here's a good comment. $9.5 million? Couldn't pay me enough to live in any large city, and this guy drops that kind of large on just a penthouse? My neck of the woods, I could grab a section of ground that's 640 acres for you city types, put one hell of a house on it, and still have $7 million left over to play with. Easy. Oh, I like these two. And then I'm going to stop. Oliver's Twist. That's a pun on the Dickens novel. May I have more, please, sir? But F anyone who voted for Trump. And then I'm going to end with this one. I think I hate this guy even more than the rest of the unfunny, leftist, virtue-signally crowd. That would be Stewart, Colbert, B, etc. You have to be an extremely devolved beta American to not only put up with but enjoy a British wanker deliberately moving to our country and then lecturing us on how much we suck. Come to think of it, every British immigrant to the U.S. I know is like this. With other nationalities, there's always a percentage who are loyal and grateful new Americans. But Brits, at least all the ones I know, seem to have an irrepressible need to play George III, especially on the topic of guns. It never seems to occur to them that if Britain were so wonderful, they wouldn't have had to move here in the first place. Anyhow, let's see if we can see any sunrise now. I think the answer is going to be no. It might be too early, actually. It might take a little more effort on my part. Oh yeah, it's peeking out. Look at that. I gotta walk a little bit to get to it. But here we go. How you all doing today? Go through the palm trees and it will peek out, maybe. Stick the palms in there first. Walk down this street a little bit. You don't get this elsewhere, do you? Isn't that pretty? All right, have a nice day. Thank you for watching.